in one of these towns. Let me show you on the map exactly where this is taking place. Everywhere you see in yellow here is now under Ukrainian control. Until a few days ago, it was all under Russian control. This has happened with stunning rapidity, including, you can see right here, the city of Izium, which was a key conquest by the Russians early on in the conflict. That is now mostly under Ukrainian control. Let's go right to CNN's Melissa Bell, live in Kyiv this morning with this remarkable turnaround, Melissa.
John, quite extraordinary. Some 3,000 square kilometers that are now in Ukrainian hands, say Ukrainian authorities. But remember that this is really hard for us to verify because of the media blackout. Journalists just not allowed to get close to the front lines of those counteroffensives. And yet, CNN was able to get exclusive access to the town of Kupiansk, just to the north of Izium that you just saw. What we found, John, is that even though a Ukrainian flag has been raised somewhere, it does not necessarily mean that the fighting's done. The tanks spoke to a hasty Russian retreat as Ukrainian forces swept eastwards over the weekend, triumphantly raising the flag over Kupiansk on Saturday. Local police forces providing CNN with exclusive access to a key town now meant to be under Ukrainian control. We still feel uneasy because we've been bombed for 4 days in a row, says Vasil, and nothing's certain yet. Which only became clearer as we headed further in to Kupiansk.
Aircrafts, helicopters, shells, everything.
A first artillery strike, too close for comfort, then a second, much closer. That was the sound of artillery landing just next to our car, our armored car. We had come into Kupiansk hoping to get to that flag to see where it had been planted only yesterday, but as you can see, this Sunday afternoon it's still the scene of some pretty fierce fighting. We've been hearing the sound of outgoing artillery fire. That was the sound of incoming. 2 hits directly targeting our car, says the policeman. Time to go back to what we'd come to see. Those parts of Kyiv region fully under Ukrainian control. Like Zaleznice, where after 6 months of occupation, Ukrainian investigators know all too well what they'll find. After Bucha and Borodianka that were under Russian control for only a month. Yes, according to our information, we are recording war crimes in almost every village, he says. This, the body of one of 2 civilians killed in late February. An early victim of the invasion and evidence now of what 6 months of Russian occupation have cost. John, those grisly finds continuing here in eastern Kyiv. Even as you saw there, the fight continues and bitterly for Ukrainian forces trying to regain more ground, John.
This morning, the U.S. growing concern that Moscow's weaponization of oil and gas could cause division in Europe's united front against Russia's war on Ukraine. It comes as Europe faces a tough winter and skyrocketing energy costs after the Kremlin shut off gas flows through a key pipeline. CNN's Natasha Bertrand joins me now. Natasha, tell us about these concerns.
Yeah, so they're warning of a particularly tough winter, right? I mean, European leaders are saying that there could be blackouts across Europe. People are already taking to the streets to protest these skyrocketing energy costs. And President Putin shut off gas flows entirely through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Europe last week, saying that he's not going to resume those gas flows until Western sanctions are lifted. So obviously putting even more pressure on European supplies. So the White House is saying right now, look, we don't see any real signs that European unity on punishing Russia is fracturing at this point. But they are concerned that that is kind of easy to say and do when it's summer. But when it gets cold, when energy prices start rising even further, the risk of some kind of political instability kind of breaking out as these prices go higher is a real risk, and they're watching it very closely. And that is why last week, when President Biden convened almost a dozen Western leaders on a call, that was his central message. His central message was about energy, about staying strong, about how the United States is working really around the clock here to try to find alternative energy sources for Europe as Russia continues to weaponize oil and gas as a result of the war in Ukraine. Now, there are lingering concerns here that Europe is going to not be able to come to some kind of an agreement on, you know, the questions of an oil price cap or a gas price cap, because there are some countries within the European alliance that say, look, if we do anything else to make Russia angry here, then they're going to cut off what little supplies remains that is flowing through another pipeline to allies like Hungary, for example. Countries like Austria also pretty concerned about this. So it remains to be seen what kind of thing is kind of going to be the last straw here in terms of anything that breaks the Western resolve here. But as we were talking about during the break, it's a little bit harder now because of the momentum that we see Russia having. However, a lot of Western intelligence officials that we see Ukraine having, but a lot of Western intelligence officials are saying that, that is only going to steel Putin's resolve to try to make life even more miserable for the Europeans as he loses ground in Ukraine and as life gets harder even for Russians as their economy tanks.
Yeah, harder to pull the rug out from underneath.